Hey guys, tonight we're taking a step way back to a time before alarm clocks, espresso machines, and phone screens glowing at 2 a.m. Imagine you're waking up in a medieval village, maybe somewhere in England around the 13th century. The rooster is your alarm clock, and he's not hitting snooze for anyone. You're about to find out what a morning really felt like when the world ran on candlelight and cold air. And fair warning, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I love seeing that little roll call across the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The world outside is black and blue with the first shy glow of dawn. You're half buried beneath a pile of coarse wool blankets, sharing body heat with whoever else sleeps in your household. It could be your spouse, a couple of kids, maybe even the family dog who earns his keep by keeping the rats out of the grain. The floor is packed dirt, uneven and cold enough that your toes curl before they even touch it. There's no mattress, just a straw-stuffed tick that squeaks when you shift. The smell of it is a cocktail of earth, sweat, and smoke that somehow you've stopped noticing. You hear the rooster first, then the distant sound of a cow lowing in protest, and maybe the jangle of a bell somewhere down the lane. The village is stirring. You, however, are not ready. You pull the blanket up to your chin, trying to delay the moment when you have to leave your only pocket of warmth. For a fleeting instant, you wonder what it'd be like to wake up in the castle instead, where the fire never goes out and someone else does the fetching and carrying. But then again, rumor has it even nobles sleep under canopies to keep mice and falling thatch from dropping on their heads. So maybe everyone's just pretending comfort exists. Your eyes adjust to the dimness. The single small window, covered with stretched parchment instead of glass, leaks a thread of gray light. You can see your breath in the air. Somewhere beside you, someone mutters and rolls over. Time to get up? You push yourself upright, bones complaining like old hinges. Your tunic, folded neatly the night before, waits on a peg near the bed. The fabric is rough, undyed woolachy enough to remind you you're alive. You pull it on and hope the day will warm quickly. Outside, a thin mist has settled over the thatched roofs. The village smells like damp hay, wood smoke, and livestock. Romantic, right? There's a rhythm to these mornings. No one asks, "What should we do today?" because the answer is the same as yesterday: survive. You reach for your boots, their leather stiff with age and mud, and mutter a quick prayer that the laces hold. Beneath the tunic, your linen shift clings cold against your skin. It's not glamorous, but at least it's clean, or, more accurately, less dirty than it was last week. Historians still argue whether medieval people changed their clothes often or just aired them out and called it laundry. Day, probably a bit of both. You shuffle toward the hearth, careful not to trip over the cat sleeping by the coals. If the fire died overnight, and it almost always did, you'll need to start it again before anyone else complains about the chill. You reach for the tinderbox. The flint and steel are temperamental. It takes several strikes before the spark finally catches on a scrap of dry moss. You blow gently until the smoke thickens and the faint orange glow blooms into flame. There it is, the small miracle of warmth returning to your world. The fire's light paints the room in flickering gold. Around you, the low ceiling beams gleam with soot, the walls of wattle and daub faintly sweating from the cold. You can hear a child coughing under the blanket and the soft bleat of a goat from outside the door. The day demands your attention. In this dim half hour before sunrise, you notice how alive the quiet is. The creak of wood as someone in the next cottage moves, the distant clank of a bucket at the well. You catch yourself smiling at the thought that everyone's morning begins the same way, half asleep, half frozen, already behind on chores. You pull on a hood or cap to trap a little warmth. Hair washing is a luxury reserved for summer, or for people who can afford to heat enough water. Right now, your focus is simpler. Find breakfast, find daylight, and hope no one's stolen the best eggs. Outside, the rooster is joined by a chorus of squawking hens. The first truly human sound of the day drifts across the lane, someone shouting at their cow. You step out into it all, boots sinking into the damp earth. Mist curls around your legs like slow smoke. The horizon glows pale pink. It's the kind of beauty no one stops to appreciate, mostly because they're too busy trying not to freeze. There's a saying in the village that the rooster's second crow belongs to the lazy. You've already missed the first. Time to move faster. You duck back inside to stir the ashes again, this time to heat water for everyone else. The kettle is blackened, dented, but loyal. You fill it from a wooden pail and set it over the fire, watching steam rise in slow ribbons. That smelled the first wisp of wood smoke mixing with wet woolies, the medieval equivalent of morning coffee. It promises life, motion, and something to do. You reach for a crust of bread left over from last night. It's hard enough to serve as a self-defense weapon, but you soften it over the heat until it yields. One bite, two, and it's gone. Breakfast will come later, after chores. For now, the body just needs something to chew on. You think about what day it might be. In a world without wall calendars, the church bells keep time marking hours of prayer rather than minutes. The sun is your only clock, and the rhythm of chores is your alarm. It's easy to lose track. Maybe it's a saint's day, maybe just another Tuesday no one will remember. The rooster crows again. You sigh. So far, you've achieved fire, bread, and the faint illusion of being awake. That's not bad for a medieval morning. You glance toward the doorway where the early light is brightening, and you know it's nearly time to fetch water. That's the real start of every day here. Grabbing a wooden bucket, you step back outside. The lane is stirring nonnabeers in coarse tunics, women tying kerchiefs over their hair, kids darting barefoot through puddles. The well sits in the center of the village, its stones worn smooth by generations of hands. You wait your turn, trading sleepy nods with others in line. Someone jokes that the water's colder than a monk's bath, and everyone laughs because, honestly, that's not far from the truth. You peer into the well's darkness, lowering the bucket until the rope slackens. When you haul it up, droplets sparkle in the dawn light. You can almost forget how heavy it is. Almost the water smells faintly of earth and iron, but it's clean enough. You balance it carefully on your hip as you trudge home, passing the same familiar sights: the smith's cold forge, the priest's tidy garden, the thatched roofs with thin smoke beginning to rise. Back inside, the cottage feels warmer now. The others are awake. Someone is feeding the baby, someone else is brushing straw from their tunic. You pour the water into a clay jug, saving some for washing and some for cooking. Every drop matters. Fetching more means another cold walk. You take a moment to stretch your back. The day hasn't even properly begun, but you already feel the weight of it pressing behind your shoulders. This is normal. Everyone carries a kind of quiet fatigue, passed down like a family heirloom. You wonder briefly what the monks at the abbey are doing right now, probably chanting in their chapel. Candles flickering, safe from mud and noise. Then again, rumor says they rise even earlier than you. Maybe everyone's just tired all the time. As the fire crackles louder, the cottage fills with soft movement. The first laughter of the day comes from the youngest child, giggling at the cat chasing a beetle across the floor. It's a small sound, but it makes the space feel less gray. You look toward the small window again. The light is golden now. Somewhere, bells begin to toll slow and steady. Prime, the first prayer hour of the day. Even if you're not devout, the sound tells you something important. It's time to start working. But for just a second, you stand still. The smoke swirls up, the warmth brushes your hands. And you realize that for all the hardship, there's something strangely peaceful in this moment. This fragile, smoky calm before the chores roar to life. And as you glance around your tiny home with its low ceiling, a creaking stool, and familiar smells, you think, maybe this is what it really means to wake up in the Middle Ages, not comfort, not leisure, but a kind of endurance wrapped in routine. You breathe it in. You'll need it for what comes next. The fire finally takes its hold, snapping and popping as damp logs surrender to the heat. You huddle close, letting the glow lick warmth into your fingers. Outside, the world is still half asleep, frost on the thatch, smoke rising like ghostly ribbons from a few early chimneys. Inside, your tiny hearth becomes the sun around which everything revolves. Without it, there's no cooking, no warmth, no light, no day. You add another stick and coax it gently with your breath. It's stubborn, smoldering more than burning, but that's the way of it. Fire is a living thing in this world, and you have to charm it awake. There are no matches, no lighters, no quick fix. Just flint, steel, and patience. You sit back on your heels, rubbing the stiffness from your wrists, proud of your small success. You've created the first miracle of the morning. Someone behind you mutters that the smoke's too thick, waving a hand as the fumes sting their eyes. You grin. Smoke inevitably curls upward through the single hole in the thatch. The so-called chimney, which mostly lets in as much cold as it lets out smoke. Still, the smell of it woody, sharp, comforting means home.
Oh.
You reach for the iron pot resting in the corner, still blackened from countless meals. It's heavy, but you drag it to the hearth and pour in a scoop of yesterday's water. Maybe you'll make thin porridge or steep some herbs if you're lucky enough to have them. The medieval rule of breakfast is simple. If it's edible, it's breakfast. While you work, the sounds of life begin trickling in. The cluck of hens, the bark of a dog, the thud of someone chopping wood to cottages over. The air tastes of smoke and dew, and somewhere a baby cries in that sleepy, hungry way that says the day has truly begun. You take a moment to look around the cottage again. The walls woven wattle packed with dawbar, rough and cracked, but they hold. Bundles of dried herbs hang from the rafters, partly for medicine, partly to mask the less poetic sense of the household. The floor is scattered with rushes, replaced when they get too foul to ignore, which is, let's say, not often enough. You try not to think about what's beneath them. As the fire crackles higher, you kneel to stir the ashes from last night, finding a few glowing embers still hiding deep down. A small victory you won't have to start over. You blow gently until they flare, feeding them dry twigs until the flames bloom strong and steady. It's mesmerizing, that dance of orange and gold. There's a certain meditative rhythm to it. Feed the fire, warm the pot, stir, wait. You might not have much in the way of comfort, but you understand the simple power of routine. Fire first, always fire first. Historians still argue whether medieval cottages were as smoky inside as we imagine. Some claim clever venting made it tolerable. Others think the haze hung in the air like an eternal ghost. Standing here, blinking through the sting in your eyes, you vote for the latter. The air is thick enough to flavor your breakfast before it's even cooked. Still, the hearth isn't just about food. It's the center of everything heat, light, and superstition. People say spirits linger near it, that if you whistle over the flames, you'll wake them. You resist the urge to test it. No need to invite ghosts before sunrise. You hear a faint knock at the door, a neighbor, perhaps, or one of the village kids running errands before chores. You pull it open to find old Thomlin, your nearest neighbor, clutching a small bundle of sticks. His beard is frosted white, and his nose looks like it's been dipped in wine. Though you know it's just the cold. Got some kindling to spare? He grunts, pushing the bundle into your hands. Trade you later for some ashes for the garden. You nod, grateful. In a village like this, everything's barter, nothing wasted. Even ash has value. It sweetens the soil, helps scrub clothes, and sometimes stands in for soap. You promise him a bucketful by week's end, and he shuffles off with a satisfied grunt. You toss a few of the new sticks onto the fire, watching them catch instantly, hissing where the frost melts off. The warmth spreads faster now, painting everyone's faces in a soft orange glow. You stretch your hands toward it, palms out, and feel the stiffness melt from your joints. Better, you murmur, to no one in particular. Behind you, someone cracks a joke about how the fire looks hungry enough to eat the house. You chuckle softly. 3 jokes before noon keeps the cold away, or so they say. You reply, at least it's got better taste than the porridge will. The laughter fades into the quiet rhythm of morning tasks. Someone mends a tear in a sleeve. Someone else sweeps the hearth, though sweeping here means redistributing the dirt evenly. You find your eyes drawn to the dancing flames again, hypnotized. It's easy to forget, in moments like this, how precious fire is. One spark can mean lifelike's warmth. A cooked meal, but one spark in the wrong place, and half the village could vanish in an hour. You've seen it happen once. The thatch catches faster than you can shout. So every night, every morning, every ember is tended like a child. You grab the small pot hook, testing its sturdiness before hanging the iron pot to heat the water properly. The handle creaks but holds. You stir it with a wooden spoon worn thin from years of use. The spoon, the pot, the hearth, they're more heirloom than possession. You'll likely hand them down someday, assuming they survive you. The water begins to bubble, releasing little sighs of steam that fog your face. You toss in a pinch of oats and give it a slow stir, feeling the stiffness in your arms from yesterday's labor. Even this simple act feels heavy when you're tired from plowing or weaving. A small mouse darts across the floor, pausing boldly near the fire. You aim a half-hearted shoe in its direction, but it scurries away before you can hit it. The cat opens one lazy eye, decides the mouse isn't worth the effort, and goes back to sleep. Typical, you can hear more movement outside now. Hooves clopping on the frozen lane, someone calling for their child, the clang of a pail at the well. The village is shaking off its sleep. You think about the manor house up the hill, its kitchen full of servants already chopping, stirring, gossiping, feeding fires bigger than your entire home. There's a strange comfort in knowing that rich or poor, everyone starts the day with smoke in their eyes. You stir the porridge again. It's thickening now, clumping stubbornly at the edges. You scrape it down, muttering that it would taste better if the oats hadn't been stored so close to the turnips. Someone behind you jokes, could be worse. Could be rat stew again? You laugh despite yourself. That's the trick of these mornings, finding humor in small miseries. You make a point of savoring the steam rising from the pot, even if it smells faintly of wet rope. You pour the thick mixture into wooden bowls, scraping the last stubborn bits from the sides. Everyone takes a share, grateful, if not exactly delighted. As you sit there with your own bowl, blowing on the spoon, you catch yourself thinking how much you rely on this little hearth. It's not just warmth, it's company. The flicker of light makes the shadows dance, turning the cramped cottage into something almost cozy. Outside, the rooster crows again, his third, for the late risers. You're proud to have beaten him to it. The fire crackles behind you, steady and faithful, as if to say, we've made it through another night. You glance toward the window, where sunlight is finally threading through the parchment covering. The mist outside glows gold now, and you know it won't be long before you have to leave the warmth for the cold fields. But not yet. For now, you just sit and listen to the fire, to the low hum of the waking world. Somewhere in that moment, you feel a strange kind of peace. It's not comfort. Exactly, it's the satisfaction of having done the first hard thing of the day, making light out of darkness. You've breathed life back into your home, turned cold ash into fire. And as the warmth seeps into your bones, you think, maybe this is the best part of the morning, the quiet victory before the noise begins. You stare at the bucket by the door as if it's plotting against you. A thin film of ice glints across the surface, mocking your good intentions. Washing in a medieval morning isn't so much a routine as it is a dare. You sigh, dip a hand in, and immediately regrets every decision that brought you here. The water is cold enough to make saints swear. Still, you've got to do it. The body doesn't clean itself, even in the Middle Ages. You grab a rough linen cloth once white, now a shade of determined grain-splash water on your face. It stings, sharp and bracing, the kind of cold that makes you gasp like you've swallowed winter. You wipe your hands, neck, maybe arms if you're feeling ambitious. Anything more would count as an act of heroism. Historians still argue whether medieval folks actually washed much at all. Some claim they were surprisingly clean, bathing in rivers and using herbal rinses. Others insist they avoided water like it was cursed, preferring to dry wash with powders or just change their underclothes once in a blue moon. You decide the truth probably lies somewhere between. Reasonably tidy and smelling faintly of goat. Your nose confirms it's closer to goat. There's a tiny shard of polished metal nailed to the wall of a poor man's mirror. Peer into it. The reflection warped, like looking into a puddle. Your hair sticks up in defiance of all laws of order, and your cheeks glow red from the cold. You run your fingers through the tangles, realizing the comb went missing weeks ago. You make do with your hands, muttering something about starting a new medieval hairstyle trend. The frozen mop. Behind you, the rest of the household stirs. Someone sneezes violently. Someone else groans about the water being gone already. You toss them the bucket with a grin that says, "Good luck surviving that." The collective groaning that follows could wake the dead. It's not just vanity that makes you wash, though. It's superstition, habit, and health rolled into one. You've heard the priest say that cleanliness pleases God, but not too much cleanliness, lest you be mistaken for prideful. So there's a fine line between holy hygiene and sinful luxury. You aim somewhere in the middle, spiritually acceptable stink. Once the ritual of freezing yourself is done, you grab the coarse towel hanging by the hearth. It's barely more absorbent than burlap, but it does the job. You rub briskly, trying to bring some feeling back into your skin. The fire pops and spits behind you, the only sign that warmth still exists somewhere in the universe. You glance toward the window sunlight, finally filtering through the thin parchment. It's a weak, watery sort of light, but it makes everything glow faintly golden. Dust motes drift lazily through the air, catching the light like tiny fairies. If you squint, you can almost imagine the scene is beautiful. Almost. You look at your hands, cracked and raw from work, and remember that soap is a luxury. The local apothecary sells it for more than a week's wage, made from animal fat and lye with the faintest whiff of lavender, if you're lucky. Most villagers make do with ash and sand for scrubbing, or simply water and hope. You scrape a bit of ash from the hearth and mix it into a paste, rubbing it between your palms. It burns slightly, but does leave you feeling marginally less grimy. From outside comes the rhythmic clanging of a bell, the church's first call of the morning. It's not just for prayers. It's the village's alarm clock. It means the priest is awake, the baker's fire is roaring, and the day has truly begun. You open the door to fetch more water, and the cold hits like a slap. The air smells sharp, metallic, alive. You fill the bucket again at the well, your hands trembling by the time it's full. You watch your breath float away like small ghosts and try not to think about how much of this icy stuff will end up on your skin again tomorrow. A neighbor waves from across the lane, a woman with her hair tied up in a cloth, her cheeks flushed from the cold. "You look half drowned already," she teases. "Better drown than dirty," you reply, though neither of you really believes it. She laughs, and the sound echoes down the lane, bouncing off the stone walls and thatched roofs. Moments like that shared jokes before work are the closest thing to comfort most villagers get. You lug the bucket back home, feeling the weight pull at your shoulder. The muscles in your arms already ache from yesterday's work, and the day hasn't even started. The bucket sloshes against your leg, soaking your hose with a splash that makes you hiss. Back inside, the warmth of the fire hits your face, a small mercy. Someone has set out a wooden basin near the hearth, ready for the family's turn at washing. Children squirm as they're scrubbed, yelping at the cold. Their laughter and protests fill the room, echoing off the low beams. You can't help but smile. It's chaos, but it's home. You take a seat on the low stool near the fire, watching the water steam faintly as it warms. You flex your fingers, still numb. The cat from earlier curls around your ankles, purring like a tiny bellows. You scratch behind its ears, grateful for the heat it radiates. In villages like this, everyone has their own washing habits. Some keep a small wooden tub outside for full baths or events that usually happen on holy days or after harvest. Others trek to the nearby river, stripping down and splashing in the shallows while pretending not to notice the leeches. You can't remember the last time you had a full bath. Maybe midsummer. Maybe last year. The memory's fuzzy, like your reflection in that bit of tin. There's an odd pride in it, though. You've survived the cold, the grime, the routine. You're not just washing, you are declaring to the world that you're still here, still human, even if you smell faintly of yesterday's smoke. A little superstition crosses your mind, washing away the night's dreams. The older folks say water steals what the dark leaves behind: bad luck, bad spirits, bad thoughts. Maybe that's why you do it, even when it hurts. You can't afford to carry extra misfortune. Not when every day's already heavy enough. The fire cracks again, sending a shower of sparks up the flue. You watch them rise, tiny golden stars vanishing into the morning light. You think about the monks at the abbey. Rumor says they bathe every Saturday, whether they need it or not. Imagine such luxury. Some even have heated bathhouses, built of stone, where the water steams like a miracle. Of course, you'd have to chant psalms the whole time, but that's a small price to pay for not freezing your toes off. Your youngest child, or maybe the neighbors, dips a finger in the water and shrieks at the cold. Everyone laughs again, and for a moment the cottage feels lighter, warmer, almost happy. The air smells of smoke and wet linen, and the rhythm of the day is settling in. You pour a little water over your hair one last time, gasping at the shock. It's not much, but it's enough to feel human again. You dry it roughly, feeling cleaner, lighter, awake. As you set the bucket aside, you catch sight of the sunlight stretching across the floor, thin golden stripes cutting through the haze of smoke. You know it's time to move on. The fire's alive, the family's awake, and the world outside is waiting with its list of demands. You take a deep breath. The air tastes of ash and cold and something faintly sweet, maybe wood sap, maybe the promise of spring. You smile at the thought, even though your nose is still running from that first splash of water. Right, you mutter. That's enough being clean for one morning. You stand, stretching the stiffness from your spine, and grab your cloak from its peg. It smells of smoke and sheep and weather, but it's yours. You pull it tight around your shoulders, ready to face the chill again. The bucket sits by the door, its surface calm now, reflecting the flicker of the fire behind you. For a brief second, you catch your reflection, again blurred, imperfect, but alive. You grin at the sight. Then you step out into the morning. Breakfast, if you can call it that, is waiting by the fire-cracked wooden bowl with yesterday's bread and a faintly suspicious lump of cheese. You eye it the way a knight eyes his sword before battle. The bread is hard enough to audition as a building material. You rap your knuckles against it solid. You sigh. Breakfast of champions, you mumble. The others are already settling down around the low table. A simple plank, balanced on barrels, worn smooth by years of elbows. The family gathers, still yawning, eyes puffy from sleep. No one talks much at first. Everyone's saving energy. The fire gives off a steady, smoky warmth, flickering light dancing across faces that haven't seen a mirror in weeks. You grab a knife dull, but Dependa Bland starts sawing through the loaf. Crumbs scatter everywhere. The blade squeaks against the crust like it's protesting the effort. Finally, a slice breaks free, revealing a dense, grayish inside. It smells faintly sour, but still edible. You dunk it into the bowl of ale sitting beside you. The ale is thin, more like malty water, but it softens the bread just enough to save your teeth. Ah, you mutter, taking a bite, fine dining. A child laughs, half asleep, as they gnaw their own hunk of bread. Someone pours more ale into a shared cup. In the medieval world, everyone drinks ale of the kids because the water's too risky. The mild fermentation kills off the nastier stuff. It's weak, barely intoxicating, but it keeps you hydrated without dying of dysentery. Win-win, mostly. The air smells of smoke and yeast and the faint salt of cheese. The combination is earthy, let's say. You chew slowly, trying not to think about how this same bread started as yesterday's dough scraped from the trough, baked in the communal oven at the edge of the village. If you'd had enough flour, you might have thrown in a handful of herbs or even an onion, but this week's been lean. You make do. Someone passes around a bowl of porridge barley and water, thick as mud. It's not bad when warm, though the texture leaves something to be desired. You stir it with a wooden spoon, breaking up clumps, and take a cautious bite. It sticks to your ribs, they say, and you believe it. Probably sticks to everything else too. Historians still argue whether breakfast was even a thing in the Middle Ages. Some say peasants grabbed a bite before heading out to work. Others claim eating too early was considered gluttonous, reserved for children, the sick, and those doing hard labor. You chuckle to yourself, plowing frozen fields doesn't count as hard labor. Nothing does. The baby whimpers, so you scoop a bit of warm porridge onto your finger and let them suck it. They blink up at you with sleepy eyes, and for a brief moment, everything feels still, peaceful. Then a goat outside bleats like it's announcing the apocalypse, and the spell breaks. Your stomach growls, but the food is running out fast. Someone's eyeing the last bit of cheese, the size of a coin, and about as hard. A silent standoff begins. You glance around, feigning disinterest, hoping someone else claims it so you don't have to feel guilty. Finally, the oldest in the house cuts it in two and tosses you a piece. You grin, grateful. The cheese is sharp, a little rancid, but delicious in its own rugged way. You look up at the rafters. Hanging there are reminders of better meals, dried herbs, a few strips of salted pork, onions braided into loops. Most will be saved for later, for when winter's bite gets worse. Breakfast now is about fuel, not flavor. You eat because the day demands it. You tear another piece of bread, noticing a dark spot on the crust. Mold? Probably. You scrape it off with your thumb and keep eating. No waste. You've seen families go hungry over less. Bread's gone tough, someone mutters. Means it'll last, you reply. A half joke, but also true. Your neighbor, Thomlin, the same one who traded you kindling earlier, sticks his head through the doorway. His beard is dusted with frost, and his grin's missing a tooth or two. Morning to you, he says. The miller's got fresh flour if you're trading today. You nod, mouth full. Fresh flour means soft bread for a day or to luxury. You promise to stop by later with a bundle of firewood. He waves and disappears back into the mist. The baby finishes the porridge and starts gnawing on the spoon. The sound makes everyone laugh. It's small, ordinary, but laughter in the morning feels like proof that life goes on even when the bread could double as masonry. You push your bowl aside and lean back against the wall. The fire crackles quietly. You can hear distant noises through the thin walls, the rhythmic ring of the smith starting his forge, the bark of dogs, the faint hum of a chant from the church. The village is waking. You take another sip of ale, swishing it thoughtfully. It's slightly sour, but refreshing. You remember hearing someone say ale was safer than water because even the priests drank it. Maybe that's just medieval logic, but it works. A faint warmth spreads through you as the fire's heat seeps into your legs. You close your eyes for a moment. There's comfort here, however small. The ache in your body, the smoke in your lungs, even the scratch of the wool cloak, all of it feels like proof that you belong to this world. The youngest pipes up, "What's for dinner?" You snort. Hope. The adults laugh. It's not unkind laughter. It's not unkind laughter, easier to swallow. You stand, stretching your back until it pops. Your hands smell faintly of smoke and barley. You wipe them on your tunic, then glance toward the small cupboard by the door. Inside, wrapped in cloth, is the family's real treasure: salt. It's coarse and gray, mined far away and traded like gold. A pinch now and then keeps the body going, but you use it sparingly. You can't afford more until the next fair. You pick up the bread crusts and tuck them into a small basket. Nothing wasted. These will feed the chickens later or get boiled into tomorrow's pottage. You look toward the hearth one last time. The fire's low now, just glowing embers. But you leave it that way. Someone will feed it later. It feels wrong to let it die completely. The hearth is more than warmth, it's continuity. You remember your mother doing the same thing, and her mother before her. The same motion, the same sigh, the same slow start to the day. Outside, you hear the church bell again, slower this time. Terce will come soon, the next prayer hour. You know it means you've only got a few moments before you have to face the chores that will stretch until dusk. You glance at the others. They're finishing the last of the porridge, scraping the bowls clean, preparing for the day in silence. Everyone moves with the same quiet resignation that life in the Middle Ages teaches early. There's work, always work. Still, for all its simplicity, there's something sacred about this breakfast ritual. It's the anchor that holds the day steady. You might not have silk, sugar, or honey, but you have this warmth, company, food enough to keep going. You look down at your rough wooden bowl, empty now, streaked with traces of oats. You run a thumb along the grain, feeling the grooves worn by years of use. It's not much, but it's yours. Outside, a rooster crows again, announcing the obvious. The day waits for no one. You stand, feeling the weight of the morning settle across your shoulders. You tie your cloak, tighten your belt, and step toward the door. The cold meets you like a challenge, biting your cheeks and making your breath visible. The village smells of smoke and damp earth. You hear laughter somewhere down the lane, someone joking about burnt bread from the communal oven. You grin. Misery shared is misery halved. As you walk past the doorway, you glance back one last time. The firelight flickers on the inside walls, casting the cottage in a warm, amber glow. You know that when you return later, the same fire will greet you, tired, steady, familiar. And that's what you carry with you as you head out into the misty morning. The taste of hard bread, the smell of smoke, and the faint comfort of survival. The mist clings to your hair as you step outside, and your boots sink slightly into the mud. The world feels soft, edged, half waking, half dreaming. The air is damp and cold enough to make your breath curl like tiny ghosts. Somewhere in the distance, a cow lowing sounds mournful, as if complaining about life itself. You can relate. You stretch your back, feeling every ache from yesterday's work. The fields stretch out beyond the hedgerows, glistening with dew. It's time to feed the animals before heading to the plowlands. Every medieval morning is a marathon, and breakfast was only the warm-up. Grab the wooden pail by the door and trudge toward the cowshed. The familiar smell hits you immediately, a nose-wrinkling mix of hay, manure, and something faintly sweet. Inside, the animals shift and snort, clouds of steam rising from their bodies. You pat one on the flank, the rough hide warm beneath your palm. "Morning, Bess," you murmur. "Don't kick me today, yeah?" She looks unimpressed. You crouch down with your stool, position the pail, and get to work. The first few squeezes are awkward, your fingers stiff from the cold, but soon the rhythm sets in. The warm milk hits the bottom of the pail with a satisfying hiss. Steam rises. You smile. There's something oddly peaceful about this task, even when your fingers cramp. A chicken hops onto the fence post and eyes you suspiciously, as if judging your technique. You mutter, "You lay eggs, I'll handle this deal." It clucks in response, which you choose to take as agreement. The barn cat, a scrappy gray creature with one ear missing, wins between your legs, hoping for a splash of milk. You oblige with a small pour, watching as it laps greedily. A moment of luxury for both of you. As you work, the rhythmic sound of distant bells floats through the fog again. Matins has ended. The priests have eaten their bread and honey and moved on to prayers. You think about the church hits both a presence and a pressure in your life. Every bell marks your time as much as the sun does. Historians still argue whether medieval people even thought about time like modern folks do. Maybe you don't either. Maybe it's just bells and chores and seasons, one blending into the next. When the pail's nearly full, you stand, stretch your sore back, and carry it toward the cottage. The milk sloshes gently, warm against your hands. Inside, someone pours it into a clay jug to cool. A few hours later, it'll start to sour into something thicker and tangerier version of yogurt. You head back outside to the chicken coop. Hens scatter as you open the gate, feathers flapping like a storm. You crouch to check for eggs, two small ones, warm in the straw. You hold them up like trophies. We feast tonight. You joke to no one. The eggs go into your pocket carefully, wrapped in a scrap of cloth. You scatter grain from a pouch and watch as the chickens peck the ground like tiny, furious machines. Their soft clucking and scratching blend with the distant bleating of sheep, your soundtrack for the day. The sheep are next. You trek up the slope toward the pasture where the flock moves in a lazy, woolly mass. The shepherd, an older man with wind-burned cheeks and a permanent squint, waves as you approach. "They've been restless," he says. Fox came by in the night. You glance toward the tree line where the fog hangs thick. The forest edge feels mysterious, almost alive. You remember the stories, spirits, witches, beasts that walk like men. You try not to linger on them. Still, when a crow croaks from a branch, you jump just a little. The shepherd laughs. "Don't worry. Fox won't try again till we fatten them more." You grin, adjusting your cloak against the chill. Together, you check the fence's just-woven sticks and branches tied with twine. You patch a broken section with a few quick knots. It's rough work, but it'll hold. Back near the cottage, smoke from other chimneys curls upward. The village is fully awake now. You hear the thud of an axe, the low murmur of voices, the rhythmic splash of someone at the stream washing clothes. Everything overlaps into a kind of living music. As you walk back through the village path, you pass a woman carrying a basket of herbs. She greets you with a nod. "Morning. Hard frost coming," she warns. You nod back, noting the way her breath fogs in the air. She's probably right. She usually is. She's known as a wise woman, though some whisper witch when she passes. You find it funny that people fear the same woman they beg for cures. You remember she once gave you a salve made from goose fat and lavender for cracked hands that smelled strange but worked. Historians still argue whether such healers were more herbalists or folk magicians. You don't really care. When it hurts less to milk a cow, magic or not, you're grateful. By now, the sun is finally clawing its way through the fog, spilling pale gold across the thatched roofs. It doesn't give much warmth, but it brightens everything just enough to lift the mood. You take a deep breath. The world smells of damp earth, smoke, and hay. You can almost taste the day ahead. The mill's wheel creaks faintly in the distance, and you make a mental note. Stop by to trade later. You still need that fresh flour Thomlin mentioned. Life here runs on 1,000 small errands, each tied to someone else's. As you pass the communal well, you see a group of women gossiping while hauling water. You catch bits of conversations, something about a stolen chicken, someone's husband drinking too much ale, and, of course, a complaint about the reeve. You smile. Some things never change. You draw a small bucket of water yourself, watching it shimmer in the light. You take a sip. It's cold and slightly metallic, not bad today. You pour some over your hands to wash off the barn dust. The water stings. Your skin's already cracked from work and weather. Back home, you pour a little of the fresh milk into a smaller pot and set it near the fire too warm for the children. They'll need it before the older ones head to the fields. The youngest tugs on your sleeve, asking if there'll be honey. You laugh only if the bees are feeling generous. You step outside again, picking up your worn hoe. The ground beyond the cottage looks ready dark, heavy, waiting. It's the season for turning soil, planting winter crops. The field stretches out like a canvas of mud, each furrow telling a story of exhaustion and necessity. You dig the first line, pressing your boot down hard on the iron blade. The earth gives way grudgingly. The smell of damp soil rises rich and almost comforting. Your muscles protest immediately, but you keep going. Every so often, you pause to straighten your back and wipe sweat from your brow. The chill of morning is gone now. Work brings its own heat. You hear laughter from a neighboring plot, someone telling a bawdy joke about a monk and a milkmaid. You grin. It's not funny, really, but the laughter is infectious. Humor is survival here. Your hands are blistered by the time the sun is fully up. You lean on the hoe, breathing hard, looking over the rows you've made. They're not perfect, but they'll do. You picture the seeds tucked inside, waiting for spring's promise. Hope, in mud form. As you rest, a figure approaches down the lane. This the reeve, carrying a ledger. His sharp eyes scan the fields like a hawk, looking for prey. You've started early, he says. Got to keep ahead, you answer evenly. He nods, makes a note, and moves on. You exhale. You're always a little uneasy around him. He represents the Lord's will more than the village's, and yet he's as much a prisoner of duty as you are of labor. You take one last look at the fields before heading back toward the cottage for a quick bite, some leftover bread, and a sip of ale. Your muscles hum with that satisfying ache of honest work. As you chew, the village sounds hum around you again. Carts creaking, dogs barking, a smith's hammer ringing clear and bright. It's life in motion, repetitive but reassuring. You close your eyes for a second, feeling the sunlight warm your face. For all its hardship, this world has rhythm, balance, and strange beauty. The same chores, the same noises, the same jokes, passed down like heirlooms. You take another sip of ale and set your cup down. Somewhere in the distance, you hear the bell again. Mid-morning. Time to keep moving. The day won't wait. The bell's echo fades, swallowed by the wind, and you tighten your cloak before setting off toward the Lord's fields. The village path winds between thatched cottages and fenced gardens, each one steaming faintly in the cold sun. You can smell baking bread from the communal oven, that faint, yeasty warmth that makes your stomach growl again, even though you already ate. But there's no time to linger. The reeve's rounds mean the manor work waits for no one. You join a slow-moving trickle of peasants heading the same way, men carrying tools over their shoulders. Women with baskets, even a couple of older children tagging along to help. Everyone's bundled in layers of faded wool and patched linen. You greet a few with tired smiles. Conversation doesn't really start until the day's rhythm sets in. The manor's open field stretches ahead, a patchwork of damp furrows and stubbly remains from last season. Beyond it, the manor house rises, stone walls, high windows, smoke curling from a chimney. Compared to your cottage, it looks like something from a legend, though you know it's just drafty rooms and a lord with expensive tastes. A bailiff on horseback calls out instructions as you approach. Work that eastern strip first. Mind the furrows, keep them straight. His tone carries the confidence of someone who won't be touching a spade himself. You suppress an eye roll. The sarcasm lives silently in your mind, no sense voicing it where ears could twist your words into trouble. You take your place beside a few familiar faces and set to work with your hoe, breaking clods and turning the soil. It's slow, steady labor, the kind that blurs minutes into hours. The only music is the scrape of metal, the grunt of effort, and the whisper of the wind across the fields. Someone nearby hums a tune, a low, droning melody about a farmer who fell in love with a miller's daughter. You recognize it instantly. It's one of those songs that's been around so long, no one remembers who first sang it. Mind you, The man adds between verses, the miller's daughter always wins. They've got the grain, after all. You laugh under your breath. He's not wrong. By mid-morning, sweat slicks your back despite the cold air. You pause to wipe your brow and glance toward the manor. Servants scurry near the gate, carrying baskets of food inside. You imagine the meal-roasted fowl, warm bread, maybe even spiced wine. Your stomach growls, and you mutter, maybe in the next life. A fellow worker, old Edric, chuckles beside you. Next life. If we're lucky, we'll come back as cows. At least then, we'd eat better. You grin and get milked twice a day. No thanks. He laughs, wheezing. Fair point. The banter makes the work lighter. Everyone in the field knows the same truth. Humor is cheaper than bread, but fills you better than nothing. Historians still argue whether peasants truly hated their lot or simply accepted it. Maybe it's not that simple. You don't love the work, but you don't hate it either. It's the world you were born into, the same fields your parents and their parents worked before you. It's hard, yes, but also grounding. There's something almost meditative in the repetition. A sudden shout breaks the rhythm. You look up to see a cartwheel stuck in the mud, the driver cursing as he tries to free it. Several of you drop tools and rush to help. Together, you push, boots slipping, mud splattering your legs. With a loud crack, the wheel jerks free, showering everyone in dirt. You stagger back, laughing through your breathless exhaustion. We should charge for entertainment, you joke, wiping your face. The driver grins. But who'd pay for this show? The sun creeps higher, and the light shifts from pale gray to warm gold. The earth softens underfoot, making the hoeing easier, but the walking harder. You fall into a steady rhythm again, humming the same tune from earlier. By late morning, your stomach starts grumbling again. The reeve gives a signal time for the midday pause. Tools are set down, cloaks loosened, and everyone collapses onto the nearest dry patch of grass. Someone passes around a cloth bundle of bread and onion. Another offers a sip of ale from a shared flask. You trade your own crust for a handful of peas, cooked soft in lard. It's not fancy, but it tastes heavenly after hours of toil. You lean back, letting the sun warm your face. Around you, small groups murmur quietly some gossiping, some just sitting in silence. The landscape hums with the sound of insects, birds, and the faint creak of the manor's water wheel turning in the distance. Old Edric pulls out a small wooden pipe and starts carving at it with a knife. For my grandson, he explains. He's 6 now. Wants to be a smith? You nod, smiling. Good trade, that. Honest, steady. He chuckles. If the forge don't melt him first, you sip from your ale cup and watch as a hawk circles overhead. It dives suddenly, vanishing behind a hedge. Somewhere out there, a mouse's morning just ended abruptly. You can't help but think, that's life in miniature. Eat, work, get eaten. Sometimes literally, sometimes just by taxes. After the break, the bell rings again, sharper this time, and everyone hauls themselves upright with synchronized groans. You pick up your hoe, stretch your shoulders, and get back to it. The rhythm returns. Step, dig, turn, breathe. The afternoon brings visitors a messenger from the castle, dressed in colors far too bright for this muddy place. He carries a parchment sealed with wax and hands it to the reeve. The villagers pretend not to stare, but you all do. The reeve breaks the seal, scans the writing, and his brow furrows. Tides, he mutters. Increased again. A groan ripples through the workers. You glance at Edric, who shakes his head. Maybe next year they'll take the air we breathe, too, he says dryly. You can't help laughing, though the humor's bitter. Taxes, tithes, rent sits the invisible hand around every peasant's throat. You owe labor to the Lord, grain to the church, and still somehow have to feed your family. It's an endless puzzle with no right answer. Still, you keep working. Complaining won't fill a belly. The sun starts its slow descent, turning the clouds into streaks of rose and orange. The air smells of churned earth and sweat. You look down the row of furrows, neat, dark, and orderly. There's a strange satisfaction in it, even if the reward isn't yours to keep. Someone starts singing again, this time a livelier tune about Saint Swithin and the rain. A few join in, clapping along with dirt-streaked hands. The rhythm lifts everyone's spirits. Work transforms into something almost joyful for a few fleeting minutes. Then the reeves whistle cuts through the air. Enough for today. Tools drop. Backs straighten. A collective sigh escapes the field. You stretch, feeling the stiffness settle into your muscles. The light's fading fast. Soon it'll be too dark to see the furrows properly anyway. You gather your things and start walking back toward the village, the group moving in weary silence. The path glows faintly with the last of the sun, and mist begins to rise again from the hollows. The smell of cooking fires hits you long before you reach the cottage's onion, cabbage, smoke, maybe a hint of salted meat. Your stomach reacts like it's trying to sing. Halfway home, you pass the church. The doors open, a sliver of golden light spilling out. Inside, you glimpse the priest kneeling before the altar, murmuring prayers. You pause a moment, cross yourself, and keep walking. Faith is habit more than thought, now a reflex, like breathing. Historians still argue whether medieval faith was genuine devotion or social obligation. For you, it's both. You believe, mostly, but you also know that showing up keeps suspicion at bay. In a world where storms, famine, and disease feel random, believing in order, even divine orders, comforting. By the time you reach your cottage, twilight has settled in. The fire's burning again, warm light flickering through the gaps in the door. You push it open and step inside. The smell of stew fills the room, pottage bubbling away in the pot, thick with barley turnips and a scrap of salted pork. Heaven in a bowl. The family greets you with tired smiles. The baby gurgles from their cradle, and you scoop them up, pressing your forehead against theirs. They smell faintly of smoke and milk. You feel a jolt of tenderness that wipes away the day's fatigue. You settle by the hearth, wooden bowl in hand. The stew is hot, savory, and filling. You eat slowly, savoring every bite. The conversation drifts around soft, ordinary talk about neighbors, weather, and the upcoming market day. Someone jokes about the reeves horse stepping in a ditch, and laughter bubbles up. It's small, but it feels enormous. When the bowl's empty, you lean back against the wall, eyelids heavy. The fire pops softly, throwing golden light across the room. Outside, the last light fades, and darkness takes the fields. The world grows quiet except for the occasional bark of a dog or the rustle of wind through thatch. You close your eyes, feeling warmth seep through your bones. Today was long. Tomorrow will be the same. But right now, for this small stretch of night, you're home, fed, and safe. And in the medieval world, that's more than enough. You wake again before dawn. Not because you want to, but because that's what the body does when it's been trained by years of roosters and bells. Your joints ache as you shift under the wool blanket. The air inside the cottage feels sharper than a knife. You can see your breath, faint white plumes rising and fading in the dim light of the embers. For a moment, you consider staying wrapped up, but you know better. There's no such thing as sleeping in when the day's work starts before sunrise. You push yourself upright, rubbing the stiffness from your neck. The baby whimpers softly, half awake. You stroke their head and whisper, "She, still dark." But the cottage is already stirring the scrape of wood. The rustle of cloth, a muffled cough. Someone's feeding the fire. Sparks jump to life, licking up the dry twigs until orange light blooms across the walls. You pull on your tunic, rough against your skin, and grab your boots. One lace breaks immediately, because of course it does. You tie it in a knot and call it good enough. The smell of smoke and damp wool fills your nose. Your hands are still raw from yesterday's work, the blisters tight and shiny. You flex your fingers and mutter, "Another day, another blister." Outside, the world's still a deep blue, the horizon only beginning to lighten. A thin frost has formed on everything, on the fences, on the thatch, even on the handles of your tools. You breathe out and watch the mist swirl away. There's something almost beautiful about this quiet moment before the village wakes, when the only sounds are your footsteps and the distant, sleepy lowing of cattle. You grab a small loaf of bread from the shelf, tear it in half, and share it with the child beside you. They chew slowly, still half asleep, crumbs clinging to their cheeks. You ruffle their hair, then set off toward the byre to check on the animals. The door creaks open, and the familiar smells hit you: warm hay, manure, the earthy musk of living things. The cows shift lazily when you enter. You reach out to pat one on the flank. "Morning, Bess," you whisper again. We meet once more. She flicks her tail in response. You take it as a greeting. The milk pail waits by the stool, and soon you're back in that same rhythm: squeeze, squirt, hiss, steam. The barn cat appears like a summoned spirit, eyes gleaming in the half-light. You pour a small splash into a dish for her, because you're not a monster. When you finish, the first hints of sunlight spill through the cracks in the barn boards. You step outside, wiping your hands on your tunic. The air smells clean and raw. You look toward the east, where the sky's turning pink and gold. The fields glitter with frost, 1,000 tiny shards catching the light. You take a moment just to breathe it in. It's easy to forget beauty when your days are filled with mud and sweat. But mornings like this remind you that the world can still surprise you, even after years of sameness. You smile, despite the ache in your shoulders. Then the bell rings. Prime, the first call of the church day. You sigh. Beauty's over. Duty begins. You head down the lane toward the church, joining others as they emerge from their cottages. Everyone's bundled up, heads bowed against the cold. The ground crunches underfoot. You exchange a few sleepy nods. No one talks much this early. Words can wait until the body's had its first cup of warmth. Inside the small stone church, the air is colder than outside. You kneel on the hard floor, the chill seeping through your knees. Candles flicker on the altar, throwing trembling shadows across the worn faces of the saints carved into the wall. The priest's voice echoes softly, chanting Latin phrases that wash over you like music. You don't understand every word, but you don't need to. The rhythm's enough. Historians still argue whether peasants truly believed in every word of the church's teachings or simply followed out of habit. You're not sure which category you fall into? You believe in something bigger than yourself, but whether that's God or just the need to hope, you can't quite say. When the prayers end, everyone files out silently. Outside, the sun's fully up now, spilling gold over the fields. You squint against it, the sudden light making your eyes water. The cold feels less biting, though your fingers are still stiff. You head home briefly to grab your tools: a hoe, a wooden rake, a small basket tand. Then it's back to the manor fields. Today's task is different. Gleaning. You're gathering leftover grain stalks from the Lord's harvest. It's technically a loud part of the right of the poor, but under the reeve's sharp eye, it feels more like charity dressed in rules. You crouch low, pulling the scattered stalks into bundles. Your fingers go numb from the cold, but you keep moving. The straw scratches your skin, leaving faint red lines. Every handful you gather feels like a small victory, a few more meals secured for winter. You glance up occasionally, watching the others work. There's Thumlin again, humming that same off-key tune he sings at every job. There's old Edric, moving slower today, but still steady. The rhythm of the village continues, everyone in their place, like parts of a living machine. By midday, your back screams for mercy. You straighten slowly, hands pressed into your lower spine. The reeve approaches, ledger in hand. He nods curtly, scanning the piles of grain. "Good," he says. "You'll get your share when the tally's done." You resist the urge to roll your eyes. "Aye, sir," you say instead, voice neutral. The trick is to sound respectful without sounding too respectful. It's an art. When he walks off, you let out a breath you didn't realize you'd been holding. You sit on a rock and pull out a crust of bread, tearing it slowly. A couple of other workers join you, and for a few moments, there's easy laughter against someone making fun of the Reeves horse, someone else pretending to imitate the priest's voice. You join in, laughing until your sides hurt. It's strange how laughter feels sharper in the cold, like it cuts through the air cleaner. You think about that sometimes, how even the hardest life still finds room for humor. Maybe it's survival instinct. Or maybe it's rebellion in its own quiet way. You finish eating and get back to work. The rest of the day blurs into movement, stooping, gathering, bundling, stacking. Your muscles burn, your fingers sting, but you find a rhythm again. The steady repetition dulls your thoughts, and for a while, you almost feel detached from your body, just motion and breath, one after another. Then, as the sun starts to dip, something catches your eye, a small bird trapped in the netting near the edge of the field. Its wings flap desperately, the thin twine cutting into its feathers. You set down your bundle and walk over, crouching beside it. Carefully, you loosen the knot until it's free. The bird hesitates for a heartbeat, then shoots skyward, vanishing into the pale blue. You watch it go and smile faintly. "Better luck than me," you whisper. By the time the bell rings for Vespers, the sky's turning violet, and the air has that metallic scent that comes just before frost settles again. You gather your last bundle and sling it over your shoulder, heading home along the same muddy path. Your legs ache, but the sight of smoke curling from your chimney keeps you going. When you reach the cottage, the fire's already burning, and the smell of stew hits you like a blessing. You step inside, the warmth wrapping around you instantly. The children chatter as they eat, and the baby giggles at something invisible. You take your bowl, sit by the hearth, and let the heat soak through your bones. Tonight's stew tastes different, richer, somehow. Someone must have added a handful of dried herbs from last summer. The flavor's faint but bright, like a promise of spring. You close your eyes, savoring it. After dinner, you sit quietly while someone mends a torn sleeve by firelight. The soft rasp of needle-through cloth is hypnotic. The flames dance, painting gold on the walls. Outside, you can hear the distant howl of a wolf, or maybe just the wind playing tricks. Either way, you edge a little closer to the fire. A neighbor stops by with news. One of the Lord's pigs wandered off into the woods. There's talk of a search tomorrow, maybe even a small reward. You joke? A reward? Imagine that. But secretly, you hope it's true. A few extra coins could mean new boots before winter deepens. As the night settles in, you find yourself watching the flames again, mesmerized. They twist and sway like they're alive. You think about the bird you freed, the fields you worked, the laughter that broke through the day's weight. It all feels connected somehow, small threads weaving into something bigger than you. Your eyelids grow heavy, the warmth lulling you toward sleep. You stretch once, murmuring a soft prayer you barely remember the words to. The baby stirs, then settles again. The fire crackles, soft and steady. Tomorrow will come, as it always does, with cold, with labor, with moments of quiet grace tucked between the toil. For now, though, you let the sound of the wind and the crackle of fire pull you under, into the deep, dreamless rest that only exhaustion earns. When you wake this time, the world is wrapped in fog so thick you could almost scoop it up with your hands. The light outside your cottage window is pale and strange, the kind that makes you wonder if it's dawn or just some half-dream of it. The air feels heavy, muffled, like the whole village is holding its breath. You blink the sleep from your eyes and stretch until your joints pop, which, let's be honest, is the closest thing you've got to music this morning. The fire's burned low overnight, nothing left but dull red coals. You poke at them with a stick until they glow brighter, coaxing them back to life. You add a few small logs, then blow gently. The flames spring up, and the familiar warmth creeps back into the room. You sit there for a moment, palms open to the heat, feeling it sting before it soothes. Your stomach growls. Breakfast today is the same as most days. Yesterday's bread, a slice of cold cheese, and maybe a spoonful of porridge, if there's any left from last night. You chew slowly, trying to make it last, while your mind drifts to the chores ahead. There's wood to split, a fence to mend, and the pigs to check if they're not already wallowing in the neighbor's garden again. You step outside, and the fog hits you full in the face. It clings to your clothes and hair, dampening the sound of everything. Even the rooster seems reluctant to crow properly, as if he's reconsidering his life choices. The village looks ghostly shapes moving in the mist, the faint outline of thatch roofs, the soft crunch of boots on frost-hardened ground. You wave at a shadow that turns out to be Thomlin. He grins, holding up a half-filled bucket of water. "Well met, friend," he says. "Feels like walking through soup today." You laugh, mostly through your nose, because it's too early for real laughter. "Aye," you answer. "Cold soup." Together, you head toward the well. The rope creaks as the bucket lowers, vanishing into the milky gray. When it comes back up, the water shimmers like polished glass. You take turns filling your pitchers, Tomlin mutters. Historians still argue whether fog like this meant good luck for the crops. You grin. "Aye. Well, it's bad luck for my nose." Back home, the sound of hooves outside the door interrupts your thoughts. You glance up to see a mounted messenger from the manor, young, pale-faced, with that slightly smug expression people get when they don't have to walk everywhere. "Lord's calling for workers," he says briskly. "New ditch needs digging. Water's pooling near the west pasture." You nod, trying to look less annoyed than you feel. "I'll be there." After a quick stop to grab your spade and cloak, you're on the path toward the fields again. The fog thins as the sun finally pushes through, revealing a patchwork of muddy earth and frost-streaked grass. The manor's silhouette looms ahead, sharp against the pale light, its chimneys puffing smoke into the sky. The ditch-digging site is already alive with movement. Men and women wield spades, their breath forming clouds in the cold air. The reeve stands nearby, arms crossed, watching like a hawk guarding its dinner. You find an empty spot and start to dig. The first few strokes are easy enough, the top layer of soil soft from yesterday's rain. But soon you hit clay, heavy and unyielding. You dig anyway, because that's what you do. Dig, sweat, repeat. A rhythm sets in. Thud, lift, toss. Thud, lift. Toss, your muscles warm despite the chill. Someone starts singing an old work song, the kind that doesn't need melody so much as timing. You hum along, half-hearted at first, then louder. Before long, the whole group joins in. The fog begins to lift, and with it, your spirits. Halfway through the morning, you pause to rest. Your hands are blistered, your shoulders tight. You lean on the spade and glance around. That's when you spotted something glinting in the soil. Curiosity gets the better of you, and you kneel down, brushing the dirt away with your fingers. It's a coin, small and greenish with age. The edges are worn, the image almost rubs smooth, but you can just make out the faint shape of a cross. "Treasure," Tomlin laughs, peering over your shoulder. You snort. "More like someone's bad luck." You turn it over, studying it in the light. Still you say, "I'll keep it. Might bring me fortune." He chuckles. "Or a curse." You shrug. At this point, I'll take either. Historians still argue whether peasants were truly forbidden from keeping small finds like this, or if most lords simply looked the other way. In your case, no one notices, so you tuck it quietly into your pouch. It clinks faintly, a private secret. By midday, the ditch begins to take shape, a long, narrow trench snaking across the field. You stretch, feeling the ache all the way down your spine. The reeve calls for a break, and everyone collapses onto the grass like soldiers after battle. Bread, cheese, onion, simple food, but it tastes like luxury when you've earned it with sweat. You sit beside a woman named Agnes, who's telling a story about a wandering friar who once claimed to turn mud into ale. Did it work? You ask, wiping your mouth. She smirks. He drowned trying. You both laugh, and it feels good, real laughter now, not the tired kind. A breeze stirs the fog away completely. The sky's clear, pale blue, the kind that promises more cold before evening. You lie back for a moment, staring at the clouds. They move slowly, like the day itself is reluctant to pass. When the break ends, you dig again, slower now, the clay heavier as the moisture rises. But there's something almost meditative in the repetition. Dig, lift, toss. Your mind drifts to small things, the warmth of the fire waiting at home, the way the frost sparkled on the fields this morning, the faint clink of that coin in your pocket. By the time the sun starts sinking, the ditch is done. The reeve inspects it, nodding grudgingly. Good work, he says. Lord'll be pleased. You bite back the urge to ask whether the Lord's ever actually pleased about anything, and just nod. Aye, sir. You walk home slowly, legs heavy, boots caked in mud. The village looks softer now in the fading light. Smoke rises from chimneys, carrying the scent of wood and stew. Children chase each other between cottages, their laughter bright in the dusk. For a moment, you forget the ache in your body and just watch. Inside your cottage, the warmth wraps around you like a blanket. You drop your tools, peel off your boots, and sit by the hearth. Someone's already got the stew bubbling, turnips, leeks, maybe a bit of salted pork if luck's on your side. The smell makes your stomach growl loud enough for everyone to hear. Hungry, are we? Someone teases. You grin. Always. While the food cooks, you take out the coin and hold it near the firelight. The metal gleams faintly, the image catching the flicker of the flame. For a second, you imagine what it might have bought once: a candle, a loaf, a pint of ale in some long-forgotten tavern. Then you tuck it back away. The magic of it isn't in what it's worth, but in the fact that it's yours. Dinner is simple, but good. The stew's thick, the bread warm from the fire. You eat slowly, savoring every bite. The talk around the room drifts from gossip to weather to dreams. Someone mentions the fair coming next month. Another swears they saw lights in the woods last night. Foxfire, says one. Witchlight, says another. You shrug. Maybe the ghosts are digging ditches too. Everyone laughs, and the sound fills the little space like music. You feel it's this fleeting warmth that comes from shared exhaustion and shared survival. Later, when the bowls are empty and the fire's burned low again, you step outside for air. The stars are out, bright and sharp against the deep black sky. You tilt your head back and breathe in the cold until it stings your lungs. Somewhere in the distance, an owl calls. You answer softly, because why not? You think of the ditch, of the fog, of the way the morning silence gave way to laughter and song. You think of the coin in your pocket and the stories people tell to make sense of their lives. You wonder, not for the first time, if centuries from now anyone will argue over what your days were truly like, whether they'll picture you as miserable or content, ignorant or wise. Historians still argue about everything else. Maybe they'll argue about you too. You smile at that thought. Then, shivering, you head back inside. The fire's just embers now. You crawl under the blanket, the familiar weight pressing you into the straw mattress. Your limbs ache in the good way, the honest, hard-earned way. You close your eyes, listening to the faint murmur of the others breathing around you. Sleep creeps in slowly, gentle as fog, wrapping you in quiet. Tomorrow will come, with new work, new aches, new small moments of joy. But for now, you let go. The world narrows to the warmth of the hearth and the steady rhythm of your heartbeat. And just before you drift off, you feel that coin again in your pocket. Cool against your skin, a reminder that even in a life ruled by duty and dirt, you can still find a little piece of treasure to keep for yourself. The first thing you notice is the sound of low, steady tapping on the thatch above your head. Rain, not the soft, whispering kind either, but a relentless drumming, like 1,000 impatient fingers. The second thing you notice is that your blanket feels damp. You press your hand against the wall. Wet. Of course it is. The roof's been threatening to leak for weeks, and now it's decided to keep its promise. You've groaned softly, pulling the blanket tighter. For a fleeting moment, you consider pretending you didn't notice, but the chill seeping through the straw bed quickly kills that idea. You sigh, swing your legs over the edge, and your bare feet meet the cold, gritty floor. The air smells of smoke, wet wool, and earth. Outside, the world is gray and shivering. You shuffle to the hearth and stir the ashes. A faint glow answers, and you feed it kindling until the fire catches. The orange light spreads, painting the walls with warmth that feels more imagined than real. You hold your hands out to it anyway, soaking up what comfort you can. The rain drums harder, echoing in the rafters like a heartbeat gone mad. Someone stirs under the blankets nearby. Still raining. Comes a sleepy mumble. You mutter, and no sign of stopping. There's a collective groan. You smile faintly. Misery loves company. After all, outside, the fields will be half flooded. The paths will turn into rivers of mud. The animals will hate every minute of it, and so will you. But the day doesn't stop just because the sky's in a mood. You pull on your tunic, already damp from where it hung too close to the wall overnight, and lace up your boots, squelching slightly from yesterday's moisture. Medieval fashion tip. Everything's waterproof if you pretend it is. You step outside, and the cold hits like a slap. The rain is icy, relentless, the kind that soaks you through in seconds. You pull your cloak tighter, though it's about as effective as paper armor. The sky is a uniform sheet of gray, low enough to feel like it's pressing on your shoulders. You trudge toward the buyer first priorities. The cows are miserable but alive, huddled together for warmth. You give them hay, patting their sides as you go. We're all in this together, eh? You murmur. One of them flicks her tail and nearly smacks you in the face. Right, you say dryly? Point taken. The chickens are worse off, mud everywhere. Feathers matted, eyes bright with indignation. You toss them, feed, and mutter something about roasted chicken, just loud enough for them to cluck angrily. You swear they understand. By the time you head back toward the cottage, you're soaked through. Water runs down your neck, trickles along your spine, pools in your boots. You step inside, teeth chattering, and grab a cloth to dry off. The fire's doing its best, bless it, but the damp seems to laugh in its face. You sit by the hearth, wringing out your sleeves. Breakfast today is thin, gruel, barely filling. You take a spoonful, make a face, and mutter, delicious, with the full weight of sarcasm. Someone laughs. Even in misery, humor's the cheapest comfort you've got. As the morning drags on, word spreads through the village, the river's swelling. Fast, you can hear it if you stop and listen. A low, distant roar beneath the sound of rain. You head out with a few others, cloaks pulled tight, mud sucking at your boots. The path to the bridge is nearly gone, swallowed by rising water. When you reach the edge, you see it the river, usually gentle, is now a brown, frothing beast. Logs and branches swirl in the current, slamming against the supports of the little wooden bridge. It groans ominously. Tomlin, standing beside you, whistles low. If that goes, we're cut off from the mill. You nod grimly. Then let's not let it go. The next hour is a blur of effort hauling stones, driving stakes, shouting instructions over the roar of wind and water. Your hands are numb, your clothes plastered to your skin, but you keep going. Everyone does. The reeve shows up, shouting something about reinforcing the far bank, though half of what he says gets lost in the storm. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants were truly united in times of crisis, or if survival was just self-interest with better PR. But today, standing ankle-deep in freezing water beside neighbors who share your misery, you'd swear there's something real in it, something like solidarity. By midday, the rain finally softens to a drizzle. The bridge still stands, though barely. You sit on a log, soaked and shivering, staring at the water rushing past. Tomlin slaps your shoulder. "Not bad," he says. "Could have been worse." You grin weakly. It could have been me in the river." You trudge back home, the mud clinging to your legs with every step. The village looks battered but standing. Smoke curls from chimneys again, and the faint smell of wet bread baking drifts through the air. For a moment, the world feels survivable again. Inside your cottage, you strip off the soaked cloak and hang it near the fire. Steam rises instantly. You sit close, hugging your knees, watching the flames dance. Someone hands you a wooden pail, warm and weak, but glorious. You take a sip, and it spreads warmth through your chest like sunlight. A few hours later, the reeve comes knocking, literally, 3 sharp raps on the door. You've grown. What now? But you open it anyway. He stands there, dripping, his expression the same as always, disapproval mixed with exhaustion. "Lord wants the drainage ditches cleared before evening," he says. "If the rain comes back, we'll flood again." You stare at him, then at the downpour still misting outside. And maybe I'll build a ship while I'm at it," you mutter under your breath. He frowns. "What was that?" "Nothing, sir." You grab your spade again. Back out into the mud. The fields squelch underfoot, puddles deep enough to swallow your shoes. The air smells of wet earth and decay, the kind of scent that clings to everything for days. You start digging channels, letting the water run off toward the lower ground. It's back-breaking work, but strangely satisfying. There's something primal about fighting the land, and for once, not losing. As you work, you find yourself humming slow, steady tune your mother used to sing. Tomlin joins in without comment, his voice rough but steady. The sound carries faintly through the drizzle, a small defiance against the elements. By dusk, the rain finally stops completely. The sky clears, revealing a wash of deep gold and violet. The village looks transformed, gleaming with moisture, steaming faintly in the cool air. You stand at the edge of the field, leaning on your spade, watching the last light slip behind the hills. Your hands are raw, your body aching, but the ditch drains perfectly, water trickling away in thin streams. You grin, despite yourself. Small victories count, even if no one else notices. You head home under a sky scattered with stars. The mud's drying now, hardening in clumps on your boots. Each step squelches with a satisfying sound. When you reach the cottage, the door opens to the smell of stew, again thicker this time, richer. Someone's found mushrooms in the woods, the good kind, not the kind that make you see colors for 2 days. You hope. Dinner feels almost like celebration. Laughter rings out again. Tomlin raises his cup in mock toast to surviving the rain. You raise yours in return. Barely. Everyone cheers anyway. Afterward, you sit near the fire, letting the warmth sink into your bones. The crackle of the flames, the murmur of voices, the faint drip-drip from the eaves, it all feels almost peaceful. You run your fingers over the old blisters on your palms, now calloused and hard. They're ugly, but they're proof that you keep going. Someone tells a story about a saint who once made it rain just by sighing. Another claims the opposite, that witches can stop storms if you pay them in honey and barley. You chuckle. If that's true, I'll start brewing honey ale tomorrow. Historians still argue whether medieval folk truly believed in weather magic or if it was just a way to explain the unexplainable. But as thunder grumbles faintly in the distance again, you find yourself whispering a quiet, half-joking prayer, just in case. When the talk fades and the others drift off to sleep, you stay awake a while longer, watching the last embers burn down. The air feels clean now, the scent of wet earth replaced by the smoky sweetness of drying wood. You breathe deeply, savoring the quiet. Outside, the frogs have started up again, croaking in the newly filled ditches. The world's alive, restless, renewed. You smile to yourself, eyes half-lidded, the firelight flickering on your face. You think about the day, the storm, the mud, the laughter, and realize something strange. You're proud. Not in any grand sense, not like a knight polishing his armor, but proud in the quiet way of someone who faced what came and didn't flinch. The roof still leaks, your hands still ache, and tomorrow will bring more work than you can count, but right now. With the rain gone and the world washed clean, it feels enough. You lie down, pulling the blanket close. The last thing you hear before sleep takes you is the faint drip of water from the roof. Slower now, like the sky itself is finally settling down to rest. You wake to the faint pink glow of dawn filtering through your cottage window. The morning air is cool but not biting, carrying a hint of the dew-soaked fields outside. You stretch slowly, feeling the familiar aches of your muscles, the gentle reminder that you've survived another day of labor. The fire is dead, but you'll tend it soon enough. For now, you just listen. A soft chorus of roosters, the low bleating of a goat somewhere down the lane, and the faint rustle of wind through the thatch. Today, you feel a strange sense of calm. Maybe it's because you survived yesterday's storm. Or maybe it's the satisfaction of knowing the ditches are draining properly. Either way, you slide out of bed, careful not to disturb the sleeping baby, and pull on your tunic and boots. A crust of bread and a chunk of cheese will serve as breakfast, and you eat it slowly, savoring the taste. Not that it matters its simple sustenance, but there's a quiet pleasure in routine, even in scarcity. Outside, the village is waking in a gentle rhythm. Smoke curls from chimneys, and the fields glisten with morning dew. Children dash along paths, their laughter light and bright, chasing one another between cottages. You wave at neighbors who nod or smile in return. No one speaks much yet. Voices will come later, once the sun climbs higher and warms bones that have stiffened in the night. You make your way to the fields, the earth still damp but soft, not waterlogged. Today's labor is different. You're helping prepare the soil for the planting of winter crops. Furrows must be straight, seeds spaced evenly. The Lord doesn't care how your back feels, and the church doesn't concern itself with mud-caked hands. But you, for your family, you care. That care is what keeps you moving, day after day. The tools are familiar in your hands, the spade, the rake, the hoe, and they seem to hum with purpose. You fall into a rhythm. Dig, lift, toss. The sound of metal against soil mixes with birdsong and the distant lowing of cattle. A few villagers begin singing softly, an old work song about harvests past and hopes for the future. You hum along, feeling the cadence steady your thoughts. Mid-morning brings a pause. You sit on a small rise, wiping your brow, and look out over the fields. Frost sparkles in patches where the sun hasn't yet reached, glinting like tiny jewels in the grass. The manor house stands distant but watchful, smoke curling from the chimneys. You imagine the Lord inside, warm, fed, and possibly complaining that his robe isn't soft enough. You snort quietly, shaking your head. Some things never change. A breeze carries a faint smell of bread from the communal oven. Your stomach rumbles in response. Nearby, Thomlin notices your expression. "Morning's hard without breakfast," he mutters. You laugh. "Tell me about it." A few other workers chuckle, sharing small smiles as they plow and rake. Humor in the fields, even small, feels like magic. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants found contentment in routine or endured it purely out of necessity. Today, as you dig furrows and hum songs, you feel a mix: contentment, fatigue, camaraderie, and the persistent knowledge that survival is all that matters. By midday, your hands are sore, and the sun warms your back. You take a brief rest, sharing bread and cheese with those around you. Conversation drifts lazily, stories exchanged about last week's market, a calf that wandered too far, or someone's curious dream of the night before. You listen, nodding, chuckling when appropriate. These small connections carry weight. They stitch the community together, and in the medieval world, that's a treasure far rarer than gold. The afternoon stretches lazily, the work heavy but rhythmic. You find satisfaction in small victories: a straight furrow, a clump of soil turned just right, a patch of weeds cleared. The world seems to fall into order under your hands, if only temporarily, and that's enough. You pause occasionally to watch birds swoop over the fields or to marvel at the simple perfection of dew glinting on grass. A minor dispute arises near the far end of the field. A couple of villagers argue over whose turn it is to carry a heavy basket of seeds. Voices rise, sharp but brief, then dissolve into laughter when someone trips in the mud. You shake your head, smiling. Life is messy, unpredictable, sometimes frustrating, but also full of these little sparks of humanity. As the sun lowers toward the horizon, the reeve calls the end of the day's labor. Tools are dropped, shoulders loosened, and a collective sigh rises from the weary workers. You stretch, feeling every ache, every pull, and yet there's satisfaction in it. The furrows are straight, the seeds planted, and the day survived. You begin the slow trek back to your cottage. The village looks golden in the late sunlight, the smoke from chimneys curling lazily into the evening sky. Children chase one another. Dogs bark, and the faint aroma of cooking fills the air. It's ordinary, unremarkable, but comforting in its constancy. Inside, the cottage is warm, the fire glowing, and the smell of stew rich and inviting. You take your place by the hearth, bowl in hand, and eat slowly, savoring the flavors. The baby gurgles nearby, laughter rising softly. The day's labor weighs on your muscles, but the comfort of home warmth, food, family carries a quiet victory of its own. After dinner, you help with small chores, mending a sleeve, fetching water, checking on the animals. The night deepens, and the village settles into quiet. Voices fade, doors close. The only sounds are the soft crackle of the fire and the distant song of an owl. You sit for a moment, leaning back, hands resting in your lap. You think of the week, the month, the year, the rhythm of medieval mornings, of endless toil, of fleeting joys. You think of storms weathered, fields tilled, coins found, laughter shared. Each day folds into the next, and though the world is harsh, there is resilience, there is care, there is connection. Finally, you crawl under your blanket, the warmth seeping into your aching bones. You close your eyes, letting the fire's last glow fade into memory. Outside, the village breathes softly, the night humming around it like a lullaby. Tomorrow will bring work again. Frost on the fields, the sun's early chill, perhaps laughter, perhaps small frustrations. But for now, the world narrows to warmth, home, and the steady, gentle comfort of being alive. The day winds down slowly, and you let yourself sink into the gentle rhythm of evening. The fire crackles low, throwing long shadows across the walls of your cottage. You stretch your legs, muscles still tender from the day's labor, and feel the warmth seep into your bones. Outside, the world is quiet now. The kind of quiet that comes after work is done, and the village has settled under a darkening sky. You can hear the soft murmur of the wind through the trees, the occasional rustle of an animal moving unseen, the faint drip of condensation from the thatch roof. It's ordinary, familiar, and yet, in its simplicity, profoundly comforting. You think back on the morning, the cold, the mud, the relentless work, but also the laughter shared with neighbors, the small discoveries: a coin in the dirt, the bird freed from its netting, and the quiet satisfaction of tasks completed. The world outside may be harsh, the life you lead unrelenting. But moments like these remind you that there is a rhythm, a continuity, a subtle beauty woven through it all. You cradle the baby, feeling their small heartbeat against your chest, and breathe in the faint scent of wool and hay. The children's laughter has faded into contented murmurs, the day's energy finally spent. You watch the flickering flames in the hearth, letting your mind drift, untethered, carried by the soft, hypnotic dance of light. You feel gratitude for warmth, for food, for the simple knowledge that you are safe and home. Outside, the stars begin to prick the sky, faint and distant. The village sleeps beneath their cold, gentle light. You close your eyes and let your thoughts slow, your breathing deepen, the steady rhythm of life within and around you syncing with the quiet night. The world is still, soft, forgiving. Every ache in your body is softened by the fire's glow, every worry quieted by the knowledge of shelter, of hearth, of routine. Let the night embrace you, and the hush of the medieval village lull your mind into rest. Let the warmth of the fire, the calm of the home, and the gentle presence of family carry you gently toward dreams, untangling the day's labor from your bones and soul.